So all I will try to do is repackage them, as Marco said, to try to sharpen the discussion. Because basically, Marco asked a very relevant, pointed question, which is a paradox. I mean, the paradox is the following. For the last 15 to 20 years, donors have been saying that they would like to have country-led evaluations. And we do not have any country-led evaluations. So what's going on? Now, some of the comments of my colleagues were, demand for evaluation. But we know that demand for evaluation, has been growing. It's not as high as we would like it to be. But there is a general feeling that citizens need evaluation, and in order to keep the governments accountable to the voters. So, I mean, this is well understood. But why is country-led evaluation not there? Now, there used to be an easy answer to that, which is no longer valid, which is to say the problem is the supply side. There is no capacity in developing countries to do evaluation. Now, evaluation is hard, but it's not rocket science, okay? I mean, if a developing country can have an airline and can do research and come on, let's be honest. For the last 15 to 20 years, we have had an explosion of interest in evaluation. Millions of dollars were invested, in fact, on the supply side. I mean, it is not a fact that the supply side has been neglected. We have ideas, we have institutions, we have training, and as I said, and we have also the view that practice is what counts, so learning by doing. So, I mean, the supply side is a red herring, in my view. The real issue is, as Marco implied, and in fact stated clearly, is the problem is largely on the demand side. Now let's look at the demand side, okay? What are the characteristics of country-led evaluation demand? At the level of the rhetoric, as I said, on the donor side, the demand is strong. We have the Paris Declaration. We have had ownership, partnership, and results orientation for over 15, 20 years. And yet, as I said, there is a paradox, it's not happening. I think that Hans touched upon the real reason in passing. He said, after all, donors have a responsibility to their taxpayers. And evaluation for donors is not going to go away. And it takes a lot of effort to evaluate aid. Okay? And when the chips are down, it's one thing to say, yes, I'm in favor of country-led evaluation, but when it comes to giving money to developing countries to do country-led evaluations, all the grant-making criteria come into play. Questions say, well, I mean, are we going to get what we want? We talk about risk. What will they say about us? So there is a sense of potentially a loss of control. That may be an unfair explanation, but just a hypothesis. There is a sense of unease, but mostly is that, as I think also highlighted by Dennis just now, evaluation is an institution. It has its protocols, it has its practices. It's path dependent, according to the jargon. It's an institution, so it takes time for donors' attitudes and processes and practices to change. But when we come to what is to be done, there are some obvious things which can be done, which are not being done. So basically, on the demand side, I don't think you can expect donors to abandon their responsibility to their own taxpayers and turn it over entirely to developing countries. This is not going to happen. So the question, therefore, is, what is the other side of the demand, which is a demand for country-led evaluations in the countries themselves? Now, there's a footnote in my chapter here, which I want to highlight. Only 10%, only 70% of recipients of aid have more than 10% of their public expenditures accounted by aid, which means that to evaluate aid for the country is not a very good idea, because it only captures a very small fraction of their public expenditures. And to put scarce skills and put scarce money into evaluating aid doesn't make sense. So if the donors were giving them the money to do that, they probably would do it. But as I just said, this is there's a lot of transaction costs associated with making, and the Mozambique case study, which is in the book, shows that even when donors are prepared to do that, the recipient does not really trust the risk of doing it. It seems to me, Mozambique case, to me, because I've lived it, we tried to get Mozambique to take over. One gets the sense that because they were highly aid dependent, they would not like to take the risk to do a country-led evaluation which will rock the boat, so to speak. At least it's a hypothesis, but the fact of the matter is, despite all the efforts of the Dutch evaluation unit and the World Bank evaluation unit, and being prepared to pay for it, it didn't happen.